Welcome back to the Hearthstone Championship Tour Europe Winter Championship. I'm Robert Wing, joined on the desk by Sottle and Savitz. Guys, we have made it to the semifinals. 4 players remain. From here on out, it's win or go home. There are no loser or lower brackets to fall into. If you don't win, you're just back to your house, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a new position for at least one of these players because he's always had that buffer. Pokerbot has been going through winners, so he's always had that free loss that he could have taken and still had another chance, but now it's serious business for him.
Yeah, now the stakes are going really up. No matter how cool, calm, and collected these guys normally are, they're so close to getting that invitation and to BlizzCon for the World Championship and to the Grand Prize. They can almost smell it.
Right, so we begin the first semifinal with DrHippi versus Pokerbot. Go ahead and let us know on social media who you're supporting. Is it DrHippi? Is it Pokerbot? Hashtag HCT, hashtag DrHippi, or hashtag Pokerbot. We've obviously seen both of these players a fair bit over the course of the weekend. Pokerbot, as you said, 2-0'd, went right out of the group, straight to semifinals. Very convincing performance, especially as someone who brought Priest, a class that a lot of players aren't necessarily as high on. Savitz, what do you make of these two in a matchup?
Priest is definitely something to look out for. It gets discussed a lot whenever Pokerbot is playing, but it does kind of bring his unique twist to it. Playing not only Priest, but like a strange version of Priest without Death Lords, as Death Lord is one of the kind of key cards to be combating aggro.
Sottle?
Yeah, I mean, the Priest deck is certainly the big talking point for his lineup. Is a uniquely tech thing, as we've explained. He worked on a lot with Stan Sifka. All that extra burst healing, all 4 copies of Light of the Naru and Flash Heal is pretty crazy stuff, and making room for things that have kind of become core in Control Priest decks. Usually either Deathlord or Velen's Chosen is a thing that you include in the deck, and we've not seen either of those so far. So,
all right, we'll have to see if Pokerbot's unusual lineup can go toe-to-toe with DrHippi. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into this match and introduce our first player. It's Pokerbot.
Yeah, Pokerbot, despite only being 16 years of age, perhaps has as much card game experience here as anyone. Has been playing card games since he was just 5 or 6 years old. Tons of tournament experience, wise and calm beyond his years in the tournament setting. And as we said, pretty comfortable run through the tournament so far, looking very impressive so far with his 2-0 record.
Right, very composed, very measured throughout the course of this tournament, showing no hesitation or fear like Amnesiac before him at the America's Winter Championship. And he'll be facing off against DrHippi.
DrHippi, 20 years old, from Ukraine. He says that for this event he didn't really practice with anyone in particular, and he likes to practice on his own, play ranked and go from there. It certainly has worked out very well for him so far.
Yeah, DrHippi, another one of those players who has played very meticulously, high level of technical play, brought the decks that he felt most comfortable with from what we've come to understand. As you said, didn't necessarily have the benefit of a practice group, but it served him well thus far. And you mentioned, Sottle, that when you get to this point, even if you are a calm and composed individual, there are certain nerves that factor into it, but really haven't seen any of that from DrHippi at this point this weekend.
No, he definitely seems, as calm in his play as his persona suggests. Doesn't seem to be giving a lot away in terms of emotions. Is a very reserved person, and that seems to be channeling through in his play so far. Very, very solid stuff. Struggled a little bit with the Hunter deck, has been discussed quite a lot previously, but honestly, that was more of a result of some lackluster draws with the situational cards, the snake traps, etc., more than any fault of DrHippi himself.
Yeah, as a pick, the Hunter has been working quite well for as a class to bring to this tournament. Has been working well for the players who brought it. Him and Naiman both in the top 4. The Hunter is something that might struggle against the Priest if those get lined up, because there's the double Flash Heal, double Light of the Naru. There's a lot of healing effects, so the Hunter could just fall a little bit short in the damage.
Right, Rexar strangely absent in the America's Winter Championship, as we saw 0 Hunter decks, much to my chagrin, but has been putting up work here. And we see here DrHippi currently winning out in our social media poll. You guys surprised by those results?
A little bit, yeah. I think just based on what we've seen so far, Pokerbot has to go down as the favorite, but DrHippi obviously has the support out there, maybe the blossoming Hearthstone scene in Ukraine based on the success of some of their legendary players have backed behind him here.
Yeah, also a little bit surprised because Pokerbot was the player who got to this point through the upper bracket, while DrHippi was from the lower bracket, so Pokerbot maybe been a little bit more convincing in that fashion. Here we have the classes, and looks like Warrior and Mage are getting banned.
What do you make of those bans, Sottle?
Yeah, I mean, respect given to the freeze mage of DrHippi, but Pokrovac also with the priest in his lineup. That's a tough matchup in general against the freeze mage. But as we said, that extra burst healing that he has means that he may be able to outlast a potential, Alexstrasza 2 or 3 turn setup. So still, looking at his lineups, feels like that freeze mage is too much of a problem, decides to get rid of it.
We mentioned earlier that DrHippi's Hunter deck hasn't necessarily had the smoothest ride of all of his decks through the tournament thus far. Has to get a win on that, obviously, to advance to the next round. Is there any deck that sticks out of Pokervac's that you think it may have the edge against Savitz?
Well, certainly the Warlock is something that if it gets lined up against that the Hunter might do quite well. But if going into game 1, it's going to be Hunter going up against the Paladin, then that's not too bad for the Hunter either.
Yeah, I will add to this, though, that we saw from Pokervac, he's running the slightly more anti-aggro variant of the Secret Paladin. He has those zombie chows in the deck, which if he was to get in his opening mulligan here, can do a lot of work against the Face Hunter deck. Doesn't get one, but coin into double shielded minibot is not terrible either.
Not bad at all. And DrHippi, he does pick up a one-drop. It's not the one-drop that he wanted, but it's still very important, especially with that Clive Zuga follow-up.
We see Pokervac rocking the brand new Lady Liadrin Paladin hero, says hello challenger, and I actually haven't seen any of the emotes from this suite just yet, as I myself have not made that level 20 grind to unlock the hero just yet.
Lady Liadrin, is that what she's called, Lady Liadrin?
Yep.
Because I just know this as the role player flag. That's what I see. They're just waving the flag high.
Yeah, looking pretty awesome. I'm certainly gonna get mine once I have the time to do that leveling up.
Yeah, Sado, you think you'll be looking to get your Lady Liadrin Paladin hero anytime
so
soon?
One drop into Glaive Zuka here from the Hunter player is a pretty solid start, and it shows the importance of that one drop. Like Savitz said, not the ideal one drop, but often as a Face Hunter, you'll even just keep Abusive Sergeant to play on turn 1, just because you value that consistency of going 1, 2, 3 so highly.
Yeah, and it does come down. Chooses not to attack with the Clive Zuga. Does not have another weapon with his hand. So I guess what DrHippi is thinking that he might need both of those charges to potentially clear some minions from Pokrovac's side.
Right, we've talked about in this matchup, the Hunter has to really quickly decide when it's time to stop trading, and shielded minibot right from the get-go feels like it's basically time to stop trading, and that second one certainly hastens the clock by which DrHippi is going to have to get it done.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, as Savitz said, though, DrHippi chose to hold on to those Glaive Zuka charges, so it may look like he's still decided he can play the trade game here and use that weapon to leverage against the 2-2 minibots, try and get himself ahead on the board. And now with that Misha coming down, the stats mode essentially from Animal Companion, he's somewhat rewarded for this play of fighting for board a little bit and holding onto the weapon.
Yeah, quite often you're hoping for hover when you play an aggressive strategy, but in this particular instance, if he was to get the hover, the shielded minibot would have cleared it efficiently. So Misha, very good for DrHippi.
Right, just goes to show there's a time and place for every single one of Rexar's Animal Companions. Misha gonna put work on this board, and DrHippi has that Hunter's Mark. We saw it kind of sit in his hand for a while in his earlier series today, but he does have those 2 Argent Horse Riders. Unfortunately, on turn 4, would not have the ability to combo with a hero power, and peppering in those hero powers is very important for the Hunter player in most matchups, but especially this one.
Right, weaving in the hero power really becomes important where, a point you made earlier, Rob, picking when it's time to just start going face. And when you start doing that, it's pretty common to see the Hunter player start pressing that hero power every turn, because essentially any time you don't press that hero power is just 2 damage lost over the course of the game.
Yeah, back into the game, Pokrovac gonna take his time here, going to even rope on turn 3 here. I don't think there was any real options to this play. It seemed fairly obvious to go for that Avenge with the Juggler. Hero power, Avenge, maybe another one, but getting that Juggler on the board just seems so good. Because now it might be too much for DrHippi to ignore, and in that case the Avenge is going to go off.
Yeah, and we see the big difference here between DrHippi's build of this deck and the deck that we've seen from Neyman, the other Hunter player in this tournament, which is the Argent Horse Riders. Neyman is favoring the Wolf Riders in his build. That's the big splitting point in terms of decision-making in deck building. This Argent Horse Rider does kind of reward you for this kind of strategy that DrHippi has employed in the start here, trying to control the board for the first few turns against other minion flooding decks. Is an excellent trade here into the Knife Juggler, but now that he's staring at that secret, he's going to be considering all the various implications of whether that's Noble Sacrifice, what happens if an Avenge goes on the shielded minibot.
Right, and speaking of secrets, DrHippi did pick up Snake Trap with Misha. a very good combo will almost guarantee that he does at least get snakes, but looks like he's favoring that Argent Horse Rider right now, and this is where that minion shines over Wolf Rider, is the ability to have a trade and then still have that minion on the board.
I really like this play so much. I didn't even consider sequencing like this, going for so much trades, because the general strategy with this Hunter is to aggressively go for face, but I think that was a really good play from DrHippi there, being able to get the full clear and still have both of his minions alive.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on it, but this is the way he's employed his strategy since turn 1, really. After he played the Abusive Sergeant, he played the Glaivezuka. You pointed out he held on to the charge Savitz, so he was obviously committed to getting himself ahead on board at some point early in this game.
Yeah, and even though it kind of looked like, oh, missed 4 damage on the face, because he didn't go for the face with the Misha, he got to keep the Misha around, so he's going to get the 4 damage right here, and Snakes works so well with the taunt if there's no consecration from the Paladin.
Right, DrHippi could have used Quick Shot there to pop the first part of that piloted Shredder, but chose not to. Sottle, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think he's just really valuing the card draw. He's now out of stuff. He really heavily valued getting the Snake Trap into play there instead of using the hero power, which means he's going to need some sort of initiative to keep this aggression going. So he's probably planning to use the Quick Shot here to draw a card at some point. Patient Assassin drop off a piloted Shredder, usually one of the most destructive things you can see, but against a deck where pretty much every minion has 1 health, Patient Assassin not too big of a deal.
Yeah, quite often you're happy to see that, but now it's just going to trade for something with 1 toughness. It's almost impossible to get good value out of it.
Oh, baby.
That is an Arcane Golem off the top, and DrHippi could just choose to run it in, but understands he has to be getting those hero powers in, and resists the urge to drag that Arcane Golem into the face of Lady Liadra.
Right,
Although,
this is the point made earlier. Hero power this turn plus Arcane Golem plus hero power next turn is more damage over the course of the 2 turns, but you were about to add to that, Rob.
Oh no, it's just one of those things where he gets a Sludge Belcher, but
Right.
Pokerbot probably... No, this is actually one of those interesting moments where, you know, you turn 6, you have Mysterious Challenger, you would obviously get a Noble Sacrifice, but with the Hunter's board, a Noble Sacrifice means very little, and Sludge Belcher will at least help you stay alive that you can see. So have to imagine Sludge Belcher coming down over the Mysterious Challenger. Savitz, do you like that line of play?
Yeah, he has to go for the Belcher, but it's still really hard to see him making a real comeback here, because the DrHippi does have 25 remaining. That Leper Gnome is going to put Pokrovac on the other hand down to 5 HP, but if you... okay, he's going to go for the Challenger. I guess it's like high risk, high reward, but there's not even an event remaining anymore in the deck, because 1 was played and the second one is in his hand. And
right.
I believe that's just going to be a game right there, because the Leper Gnome is going to die to the Noble Sacrifice, so, and with that Arcane Golem and the hero power, it's more than enough.
Yeah, essentially no damage lost from the hero power going into from the Leper Gnome going into the Noble Sacrifice there. It gets its 2 in anyway, which means the Arcane Golem can come down and finish the job.
Yeah, we will get to see all these fancy Paladin animations, but it doesn't really matter here.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think we can blame Pokrovac too much for playing the Mysterious Challenger here, because he was in such desperate situation that even though the Sludge Belcher would have potentially bought him another turn in the game, how do you end up winning the game? The Mysterious Challenger just puts so much more stats on the board.
Right, and that's a really big win for DrHippi there, honestly, because you know we both highlighted at the start. You know, if that Face Hunter lines up against the Priest, he's gonna have issues. So that Face Hunter has now got its win. No need to worry about it anymore. And that Priest deck is still open for Pokerbot. That's gonna need to find a win with it against a different deck from DrHippi's lineup.
Right, so Face is the place in game 1 for DrHippi. Gets that very important win, but Pokerbot coming into this still has a lot of series to get right back into this. And we spoke to him yesterday about his thoughts about coming to the semifinal match, and this is what he had to say.
I'm super excited. I'm really happy. I have a lot of emotions right now, so...
Gonna help, just providing that extra 1 minion that the Boombots can hit.
I don't even want to see it. He doesn't want to see it.
The most important thing would be to prepare on my opponent, try to do some research on his list. I'm playing consistently well, I think, in this tournament, and I think I can win this tournament, yeah. To my future opponent, I will beat you.
Bold statement from Pokerbot. Obviously, he's down at the moment, but it's only 1 game and can still absolutely climb back into this. Pokerbot kind of continuing the trend we've seen so far in the Hearthstone Championship Tour season of young players coming in and just putting on clinics as far as how to play Hearthstone at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to draw too many comparisons with Amnesiac, but they are becoming more and more obvious. You know, he is incredibly impressive in this tournament so far. He does have that same air of confidence. And most importantly, he does have the ability to back it up as well. He's showing that he is a strong Hearthstone player. These words aren't just words. He's getting out there and showing that, you know, he is a very, very capable of backing these up.
Yeah, it just shows a lot of confidence to my future opponent. I'm gonna beat you, but remains to be seen, and he's up against it here, down 1-0, and has to now climb back.
Right. We see DrHippi has that Warlock and Druid deck left to win out with. Pokerbot still needs all 3 of those decks to win if he wants to advance to the next round. We are going to see Game 2 be that Zoo deck versus the other Zoo deck, and we're going to get another Zoo Mirror.
One of these Zoo hands is a lot better than the other one. Which one is it?
Which one,
wait, I got this.
Get him, Rob.
It's Pokerbotch's.
Nailed it.
Called it.
Yes. But yeah, we've seen this matchup played out earlier today, and you can see how important cards, in particular Sea Giant, are in this matchup. You know, there's debate that was raging as we were all sat watching the game about whether or not you keep Sea Giant. You know, what quality does the rest of your hand need to be to keep Sea Giant in your hand? Do you keep it if the rest of your hand is bad? Do you keep it if you have a 1-drop? But end takeaway point being, this matchup really does live or die by who gets that first Sea Giant onto the board and is able to leverage it into a strong position.
As bad as it looked for DrHippi when we saw his first cards, the Mulligan did help, and he found a 1-drop and the Nerubian egg. The egg also goes so well with that power overwhelming that he already has.
Right, we see Implosion rather in DrHippi's hand, and Implosion is another one of those cards that can make this matchup extremely swingy. High rolls on Implosion can refill the board, lead to cheap Sea Giants.
Right. Zoo in general struggles to deal with, you know, wide minions against it in a strange way. It doesn't have any AoE. There's no, say, consecration like you'd see from Seeker Paladin. So if you're playing one large minion against them, you know, this Flame Imp could just be buffed with an Abusive Sergeant, clear out a 5 health minion. But a spread of 1-1s and 1-2s and 2-2s on the board, that's much more difficult for Zoo to deal with because they need to have the same number of individual attacks to be able to deal with it. So Implosion can be a swingy card just to swing the state of the board immediately, and also has the benefit of potentially setting up a Sea Giant.
Yep, and Pokrovac getting the better end of the stick here with those 1-drops. His Flame Imp still gonna be around. A lot of options on what minions to play. I like this a lot. He could have also went for the Imp Gang boss. Getting the Nerubian egg at this stage probably kind of worthless because there's no buffers anywhere to be seen.
Right, also getting that Voidwalker down means that this egg can't immediately trade into something for value. It can be buffed and trade, but it means it'll only take 1 damage. You won't get the 4-4 in play. So.
Protects the 3-1 Flame Imp very well. Something like Abusive Sergeant no longer a good play for DrHippi.
Right, and I believe Pokerbot actually had the option on turn 1 to just coin out the Voidwalker and the Flame Imp, but chose to go ahead and conceal that he had it. And now, as you said, it is very capable of protecting that damaged Flame Imp, and Power Overwhelming in DrHippi's hand could be used to go through it, but it feels like a really bad use of Power Overwhelming, even getting the Nerubian off that egg.
Yeah, the board looking kind of right now as if it wasn't that heavily in Pokrovac's favor, but he just has the perfect play here with that Imp Gang boss. I wouldn't blame him for going for Knife Juggler Squire too much, but it's just turn 3 Imp Gang boss. It's kind of hard to pass up. It looks like he has other plans. He's going to go for the Juggler.
Yes, it's interesting stuff. So, yeah, I was going to say, I guess he's going to commit the Imp Gang boss, commit the Flame Imp into the Imp Gang boss first, just to increase his chance of good juggles. Now the Creeper being popped has a chance of doing some very good things here. He'll just be hoping and praying that that egg does not get popped. That's fine.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary there.
Ooh, this is really risky now.
Go.
And he hits the egg.
So that play looks a little bit greedy to me, but you guys want to walk us through why he went with that line as opposed to just putting the Voidwalker in
Before
the
we
end?
get into that, Sea Giant drawn this turn is a really big deal. But going back to that play, the Nerubian egg against a Zoo deck is going to get value at some point anyway. So oftentimes, you know, the correct thing to do in the Zoo mirror can be just to clear the egg entirely. Just give them the 4-4 and then trade into it efficiently. So the 0-2 body on the board still has a ton of value to a Zoo player. And if you give them the chance to trade with it in their sense, then it can often be more beneficial for them. So I don't think he was too worried, because we have this situation now where there's one 4-4 on the board, but this is the situation I described earlier where he's so wide that that 4-4 isn't really a big deal interacting with him.
I kind of don't personally like taking that chance there to pop that egg. I do understand that trying to get those juggles for free, getting multiple free knives, so to say, seems something that you might want to do, but it's just it really did not work out for him, at least in this particular instance.
Right, gonna go ahead and get those juggles off the Haunted Creeper and the Nerubian Egg, and we do see one go into the Nerubian, which is fairly advantageous for him. Gonna be able to use some trades to get rid of it. He'll leave the 8/8 on the board. Nothing he can do about it just now.
Yep, and Big Game Hunter is there, but it's in DrHippi's hand. Not getting played for tempo here. Implosion, Loatheb, both are somewhat fine.
Right, if he did play that Big Game Hunter, that would mean the end of his own Sea Giant. That's not a very good tempo play at all.
Not good at all. Playing around his opponents. Okay, let's just go there. Implosion, Loatheb, what do you think, Subtle? Which one do you go for?
I would have generally favored the Implosion. Looks like that's what he's going to go for. I think using the Implosion here gives him the ability to go face for 8, which is really important because Knife Juggler is a minion that you're kind of obligated to deal with. So if he'd have played the Loatheb there, he probably would have had to send the Sea Giant into the Knife Juggler, but by using the Implosion, he opens up that route to just jam 8 damage straight into the face.
Okay, this is really interesting because this would be a good time for a Corruption. Oh, does not get it. Because Corruption is a card that you don't really get to use very well often, but it would have been kind of cool here. Power Overwhelming is still not enough to get rid of that Sea Giant.
Right, obviously that Corruption would have allowed him to instantly deal with the Sea Giant there, but does not find it. Gets a Power Overwhelming instead. Well, looking like he's going to go ahead and just play it on that
I think by nature of the card Corruption, instantly is definitely not the correct word to be using.
Faster than normal?
Okay, sure. Yeah, that'll do.
Thank you, Sottle, for making sure I got that wording correct.
Now finally see the Imp Gang boss come down on turn 5. You probably would have preferred to get it on the board a tiny bit earlier, but it just didn't work out that way in this game. Here, 6 mana, Loatheb, abusive. I can't imagine him going for anything else.
Right, what actually saves Pokerbot on the next draw? I think it's pretty much just Defender of Argus.
Yeah, I think Defender of Argus is just about it. He can use his entire turn on Power Overwhelming here, which will let him, trade into the 8/8 and the 2/1 here and take those off the board. But he's going to tap for Argus here, make the play to win. Direwolf Alpha will come down. And does this still give him enough power? Yeah, this gives him enough power to still trade off the Sea Giant, but does not reduce the damage on board heavily enough.
You can trade off the other minions and play the Void Walker to hold back the Sea Giant. There's a lot of draws for DrHippi here.
So Pokerbot does have a very full board to DrHippi's Soul 8/8, and the taunt's not going to do it, though, as we see Leroy Jenkins come out from DrHippi, and he is going to go up 2-0 in this series.
Yeah, that turn 3 decision from pokrovac to go for the juggles instead of the Imp Gang boss is certainly something for the sidebar to potentially analyze. It was a little questionable, not necessarily a mistake to take that kind of line of play. There could have been options or like different kind of juggles where the Nerubian Egg does not get popped, and then he would have been in a better position.
Yeah, I think the interesting point is that last Argent Squire that he played, when it was the 0/1 Egg and the 1/1 Imp on the board. It's whether that final risk was worth it. I'm okay with the Knife Jugglers up until that point, definitely. When there was multiple good targets, 2 1/1 Imps on the board and then a 0/2 Egg. But that last Argent Squire was potentially risky. I'm personally okay with it. I think it was a high risk, high reward play. Didn't quite pay out, but not sure if that's what ended up costing the series in the end.
Right, well, it doesn't matter what we think. All that matters is what TJ thinks, and obviously we'll hear what he thinks later on. But now we look at DrHippi up 2-0, just has to get that last win with his Druid deck, and seems very doable from here.
Oh, absolutely. Druid against those 3 classes, especially the Priest, is probably a good matchup. The Priest can do Priest things. There's a lot of combos there. Something like Orkanai Soul Priest into Flash Heal is an efficient way to deal with an early high toughness minion. But the Priest deck is a deck that sometimes defeats itself. If you draw too many spells, you only draw one piece of the combos. You draw Wild Pyre but no cheap spells. You draw an Orkanai but no Circle. Anything can happen.
All right, well, Pokerbot facing elimination from this tournament. Let's get to know him a little bit better, possibly for the last time.
I'm Pokrovac, I'm 16 years old, and I'm from Czech Republic. Living in Prague is pretty fun. I want to live there in my whole life. I started playing card games when I was 6. My father just put some cards together and we were playing. I started playing tournaments competitively at something like 9 years old. I were on 3 Grand Prix, 2 were in Prague and 1 were in Bochum, and I did some money finishes on them. And then I also started playing table tennis, and it was fun. I started playing Hearthstone when some guys from another card game told me it existed, and after I started playing, I hit Legend in 1.5 weeks. Definitely my past experience with other card games helped me a lot in Hearthstone. So I'm on high school right now. The people from my school, they are like, oh, it's a pokrovac. They stop me sometimes and just take a signature from me or something like this. It's really cool. My father was really important for me because he was every time a biggest support for me. I was nervous on competitions, but he taught me how to focus on the games, do not pay attention for other things, and he was like, you can do it, you can win it. But my mother is more like, I have to study more, play less of my games. If I win this weekend, my mother will definitely be more supportive, I think. My chances for winning this event are big, yeah, I'm really confident. My practice partner for this event was Ostansivka, and we were training a lot, like 4 or 5 hours every day, and then a whole weekend. I want to prove I'm the best in the world, and I just want to win the world championship, maybe to be idol for some new players. So representing the Czech Republic doesn't mean much for me because I just do not care much about these things. I'm just playing for myself and I want to win it, not for Czech Republic but for me, and for my parents are my supporters. I'm Pokrovac and I will prove you I'm the best in the world.
Big ambitions for Pokerbot, prove that he's the best in the world, possibly serve as an idol for other young Hearthstone players in the future. But in order to accomplish that, he's probably going to need to go ahead and get out of this series for his tournament life first. He actually mentioned earlier on that he didn't want to play against DrHippi. And DrHippi, as we've kind of cast the narrative all weekend long, is that mysterious individual who, you know, a man of few words, comes into here, doesn't necessarily show a lot of emotion. And do you think it's just the lists as to why Pokerbot would not want to run into DrHippi?
Yeah, I think when he was expressing that opinion, it was just down to a deck list kind of situation. Felt he'd matched up kind of badly, but again, I'm so impressed with Pokerbot's just mannerisms and composure as such a young kid, and just the things he's saying is such lofty ambitions, but such mature ambitions as well. It's not just I want to win because I want to be the best. It's like I want to win and set an example for newer players coming up. You know, I want to set an example for some young kids to come into it. Like, you're 16 years old, you are a young kid.
Yeah, he set an example for me how to be better at Hearthstone. I'm learning from Pokerbot, so.
Yeah, if he was to win this event, he mentioned that in that interview that he has been asked for autographs, and I'm sure that a lot more people would be asking those afterwards.
Hey, I'm going to get mine right after this game, win or lose.
All right, so DrHippi on this Druid. This is the last win he needs to make it to the next round, and Pokerbot does have a pretty good opening hand to Zoo. We see that 1, 2, 3.
Right, 1, 2, 3 on the play, pretty much the dream. But from Hippie's side, that's 3 cards that you'd love to have as a Druid in your opening hand as well. Generally, you're looking for big innovate plays, Keeper of the Grove, Wrath, Swipe can be a keep with the coin as well, and the Mind Control tech is just such a big deal here.
Yeah, that Mind Control tech, exactly. This is the reason why you put it in the deck in the first place. It's one of the best cards against the Zoo Warlock. The Zoo Warlock is often forced to be playing 3 or more into the board. It's just something as simple as Implosion might enable it, and that Mind Control tech could potentially turn the game around, even if the early game is a little bit on the weak side for DrHippi.
Svitz, the Shredder draw there off the top gave him the opportunity. He had to do some Druid maths this turn as to how he used the coin and his ramp cards. How do you like the line he went with here with the coin Wrath into presumably the Innovate Shredder next turn?
I like it a lot. Going for that here, instead of maybe like coin innervating the Pilot Shredder, I like this much more because the Flame Imp would have been able to trade up to the 4-3 as a 3-2, and it would also almost like been favoring Pokrovac there in that situation by too much. And here, now we see the Pilot Shredder and only a Haunted Creeper from Pokrovac, so the trades are not as good.
Right, kind of that thought over the course of the weekend and from a lot of very high-level players is that Zoo is favored against that Druid, but obviously Druid is a class that kind of operates in its own universe because of cards like Innervate and Wild Growth, and the ability to just be like, I'm just going to play a Shredder, as we do see on the board.
Yeah, Druid is has a reputation of being a class that can beat anything with the right cards. Obviously, any deck in the game can beat anything with the right draws, but Druid just struggles a little bit less in bad matchups than other decks do in general.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a little bit strange coming out here as a European to North America and then casting a tournament on European time, but Druid time is a whole different equation altogether.
Never want to wake up on Druid time. It's
No,
not a good place to be.
It's not. You wake up and there's just tree ants ramming into your face over and over again.
Not what you want first thing in the morning or ever, really.
Ever, really, yeah, pretty much.
So Mind Control tech can be played from DrHippi, but he won't really get the full value out of it, so he's just going to go ahead and use that hero power, clean up the Imp Gang Boss, and still have the Shredder, albeit damaged on the board.
Yeah, in some matchups you just play the Mind Control tech for the tempo, but this is not the matchup where you play it for that. And also the hero power was extremely valuable from DrHippi, being able to kind of deny that 1/1 from trading into the Shredder later.
Yeah, and this Haunted Creeper could end up being a liability here for Pokerbot, potentially activating that Mind Control tech and also just ending up being a pretty fantastic target for a swipe if it does come down here. So I like this decision here to get the Defender of Argus down on the 2/1/1s, make the board as annoying as possible.
Yeah, the Shredder being piloted by the Mad Scientist, or in this case kind of a bad scientist, because there are no secrets obviously in the Druid deck.
Yeah, Druid doesn't have a whole lot of secrets. It puts what it's doing pretty much out in the open, which is hitting you for 14s of damage later on in the game. But
yeah, I do agree with the assessment that Zoo is still generally favored in this matchup, but it's a matchup that's got closer and closer and moved further towards Druid as time's gone on, because we've seen clunky cards like Sylvanas get cut out for things like Living Roots as they've been introduced, which are much more effective against Zoo. But Rob, you just pointed out there Doomguard being drawn here from Pokerbot.
Right, Doomguard not necessarily super common at this tournament or in the America's Winter Championship, swapped out in favor of that Leroy, but we are going to see Bran come down here, and the double Dark Peddler Savitz, you're laughing.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Flame Imp, like Bran double Flame Imp, seems good.
The maximum correct play is obviously Bran into Doomguard, just discard 4 cards. So.
Yeah, that also kind of does not work.
Nope.
Yeah, really, it should have been no real surprise to really to see the Doomguard in this list, because we've seen the Bran a couple of times already, and that's generally 2 cards that go together. Bran normally cut from the Sea Giant list with the Leroy Jenkins, but yeah, interesting, because as time's gone on, especially in tournament play, people are moving more and more towards the Leroy build of this deck, but it looks like Pokerbot is still on the Doomguard side of the fence.
And this is kind of hilarious, because I think the Doomguard would actually be a reasonable play if it didn't just cut so many cards. But as it is, with that Bran on the board, it's just you can't play it here. You gotta go for something else. And the other options, they're not exactly perfect. Those Power Overwhelmings, oh, that's a good card though. Those Power Overwhelmings unable to find full value in clearing minions. The Mortal Coil, there's not really anything to Mortal Coil. Even the Flame Imp is a tiny bit off, because it does deal the double damage to your own hero in this case.
Right, you could just go ahead and Abusive Sergeant Bran and trade it into the Drake to get rid of the double damage from the Flame Imp, although it seems like kind of a waste, and he's going to go ahead and just do it on the Defender of Argus. Obviously, he represents a lower health total.
Ooh, and he's going to jam it. I mean, I think this is totally correct. He can't just end the turn here with such a weak board, but that Flame Imp smashing him in the face for 6 damage does not feel good, especially against a class that can burst you out of the game so easily like Druid can.
I was going to say, DrHippi's like, great. Good for me. Take that 6 damage.
Progress.
Nice.
That's
6 damage for a 3/2, always good.
Yeah, the 3 damage is already something that can sometimes be very meaningful. A lot of people, when they see a Flame Imp, it's kind of like you don't even notice the 3 when it's played early on, like going down to 27 from 30 HP. It's not a big deal, but when there's a Druid on the other side with potential combo, oh my goodness.
Power Overwhelming. Dark Iron Dwarf, that's another card we don't necessarily see a lot in Zoo these days, was a staple back in the day. But yeah, dropping those Power Overwhelmings is going to give him so much power, arguably more than one man should have.
That's
Robert.
So much. Keeping those Power Overwhelmings gives him so much reach here. With the Dark Iron Dwarf, he effectively has 10 damage from his hand. Still not quite enough, since DrHippi does have that 22. Because of the little bit of a slow early game from Pokrovac.
Right, and the Dark Iron Dwarf is really interesting. Suggests that this is a throwback to the style of Zoo that was really popular a couple of months ago. Popularized by Harudra, I believe is how you pronounce his name initially, who was one of the first players to climb to Legend with it, and then used in the first Insomnia True Silver Championship by multiple players. Just throwback Zoo, topping out at Doomguard. This is the list that eventually evolved into the Sea Giant list, but Pokerbot is obviously just holding onto his guns here, thinks this is a more solid choice.
Right, DrHippi plays that Druid of the Claw in cat mode, trade, nope, face yup. He's getting really close at threshold where he can just burst Pokerbot right out of this series.
Yeah, if pokrovac chooses to tap here, that could give DrHippi the lethal unless there's some taunts, because with the Force of Nature Innervate swipe, that would be exactly 10, which is what pokrovac has remaining after the tap.
Yep, also just puts himself into the position now where, again, if no taunts come down, anytime a Savage Roar is drawn, he just has lethal on the board. So Pokerbot is going to go ahead and taunt here and does pick up the Void Walker, so that's exactly what he needed in this situation if he was going to risk the tap there.
But is he going to play it? Yeah, he's going to play it. But that does not keep him safe from the Force Roar combo. If it was there. But
no, it does not. We see that Wrath come off the top, and that's a pretty good answer to that Void Walker. Will allow him to continue putting some pressure. Could he just possibly look at playing the mind control tech just to get something on the board that obviously Pokerbot has to trade into?
I think if you're DrHippi at this point, you kind of appreciate that the game is coming to its end and that things like Big Game Hunter and Mind Control Tech have maybe just outstayed their welcome in your hand. You know, you've identified your strategy here, which is just burst to face. So I think playing out the minions on board here has a lot of value, but I think certainly what we're going to see here is that taunt get wrathed out of the way first and foremost.
Yeah, that Wrath would clear the way, but if you just do the Wrath here, it's kind of scary that when you think about it, that there could be a taunts coming up. But what if he went for the Wrath Force of Nature right here and put pokrovac down to swipe range? What do you guys think of that play?
Sure, you can do it. It's a big investment against Lotheb if that was to come out, but that's about the only thing that stops you, so...
He could still cast it for 9 mana.
Could. He could, you're totally right, yeah. So actually, this is probably just a game-winning play. It's just...
He does not go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, Savis. I think you might have identified the right line there. It's just struggling to see what that loses to unless your opponent just kills you.
That's what it would lose to. Because that would have been 13 damage with the... I think that it might have either been either a one-off, but that would have been quite a bit.
Yeah, it would have been 1 damage off. I think 22 in total. Wow.
So it would have been pretty close, but yeah, still in a good position, playing those Battle Cry minions, not getting to utilize either one, but he's so far ahead here. But it might not matter that there was nothing to steal from your opponent or nothing to big game hunt.
Right, he just keeps putting down pressure, and again, Pokerbot is at the point where he pretty much has to deal with every single minion that comes down, and we do see 10 points of damage, as you pointed out, Zavits, represented in DrHippi's hand, so for now it's just kind of a matter of waiting on that Savage Roar, possibly drawing into an Ancient of Lore, and continuing to force Pokerbot to have the answer.
I was looking at the power overwhelmings, like, how does he use those power overwhelmings? Because he needs to keep his taunt, but that's one way to use them. It's a pretty heads-up play from Pokerbot.
Yeah, just jams one immediately into the egg. No reason not to use it there, as it's just going to get discarded by the Doomguard. Is that a Shade? As Lotheb picked up here. I thought it was Shade and Axramus at first, but still that 1-3 taunt now still being on the board is just such an annoyance here for DrHippi, and he may have to bail out of holding on to this burst damage and address the board state here.
Yeah, this is a heroic Void Walker, this lowly 1-3 for 1, holding the line. Don't want to roleplay too much, but respect to that Void Walker out there doing work, and DrHippi has to deal with it, essentially, to get through and finally end this game.
Yeah, but with that load, I think he could like shift his strategy a tiny bit. Just go for the board here, go for the swipe on the Doomguard, play the load afterwards. It's not too bad. And eventually he will draw the draw if the game drags long. Oh. Okay.
Gonna go ahead, yeah, so this play basically ensures that next turn he can just hero power the Void Walker down. So death over 3 turns, or 2 turns rather, to this Void Walker.
Yeah, but I didn't think about the Innervate. It's something that it didn't seem all that valuable in this instance, but it does it does seem like a card that doesn't add much more value going on further.
And this is just going to be game. DrHippi has the Force of Nature. He has the Pyro Power, and DrHippi is going to complete the sweep on one of the favorites of this tournament. The Savage Roar just for style, doesn't even need it. Pokerbot concedes, and this is going to be the end of his run through this Winter Championship.
Yeah, he must be hugely disappointed having had such a successful run through day 1 and 2 to fall at the first hurdle now on day 3. But still, I think he's achieved something here. He's come out, he's made a name for himself. I think he's impressed some people and put his name on the Hearthstone map here, and he has plenty more opportunities throughout the rest of the Hearthstone Championship Tour to book his spot at BlizzCon.
Yeah, DrHippi all smiles there. He's in the finals now.
Yeah, he's going to be playing the winner of Naaman versus Bunny Hopper, which we will get to in just a minute. But what a performance from DrHippi. Again, the unknown of this tournament. We went through and we got the chance to get to know everyone a little bit better, what they were fighting for, but great for DrHippi. And as I said, will be Naaman versus Bunny Hopper in the finals. Or sorry, Naaman or Bunny Hopper versus DrHippi. How do words work?
There we go, Rob.
Thank you,
Got
Solly.
him.
You're an inspiration.
Oh, wow. Kind words. But yeah, upcoming match, Naaman, Bunny Hopper. Naaman, again, probably the other most impressive player. So based on what we've seen this game, it seems like it's a pretty sure win for Bunny Hopper. We're going to build up Naaman to be the other guy who's gone 2-0 through the brackets. See if he falls at the first hurdle as well.
Yeah, no matter which one of those guys from the next match is going to be the other finalist, I think we're going to have a great final for this tournament.
Right, but before we get to that, we're going to have a great interview with Dan, who is standing by with DrHippi. Dan, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. DrHippi is our first finalist for the Winters Europe Championship. I'm joined by DrHippi for a quick couple of words. I want to ask him how well he's feeling right now because he's playing excellently. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel your play is right now? Because you look very sharp.
Чувствую себя хорошо, очень даже хорошо. А насчет оценить свою игру, не знаю, я могу оценить свои топ-деки, это 10 из 10.
I feel great. I actually feel really good. And I can estimate my top decks 10 out of 10.
Well, he looks extremely happy and delighted to be in the finals. A great showing thus far. I want to ask, how much does it mean to you to get this far, also representing your country? Even the people from other countries are cheering for you, like from France and other regions. Does that mean anything special to you?
Значит для тебя это что-то особенное, представлять свою страну. За тебя даже болеют другие страны.
Это значит для меня очень много. Представлять страну всегда приятно, особенно когда выигрываешь. И спасибо всем, кто меня поддерживает.
I feel really proud to represent Ukraine, and I want to thank everybody who supports me.
Really sweet answer indeed. Now, you're going to be playing the winner of Naaman versus Bunny Hopper. Is there an opponent that you want to face off specifically?
С кем бы ты хотел сыграть следующий матч, с Нейманом или с Банни Хоппером?
Однозначно против Неймана. Неймана хочу поиграть.
Absolutely, I want to play against Naaman.
Ooh, looking for that revenge. And one more question I want to ask is, do you have anything tricky up your sleeves for the finals? Because it looks like you have a lot of surprises in store.
Есть ли у тебя какие-то трюки в кармане?
I'm full of secrets.
Oh, all right.
Полон секретов.
No need to translate that, but congratulations, DrHippi. You are our first finalist. Let's go over to the sidebar with TJ and Raven, who are standing by for a few words on that series.
I'm slightly frightened after that interview, Raven. Welcome back, everybody, to the sidebar. Yeah, so with Pokrovac gone, that's the priest, the only priest, the sole priest eliminated from the tournament. But with Naaman in the semifinals and now DrHippi in the finals, that means both hunters are now through to the top 3. So this is probably a twist of events that not many people were expecting. I've asked a couple other more analysts that have been on the sidebar throughout the course of the weekend what their thoughts on Hunter were in the current meta and why they think it's having so much success all of a sudden, why people are bringing it so much all of a sudden. What are your thoughts on Hunter, Raven?
Yeah, I think it's a really good deck choice to pick, actually, because it's something that no one's really playing at the moment, and it still has good matchup against what's popular, against a lot of Secret Paladin, against a lot of Druid as well. And when you build in the lineups for a tournament like this, you're not expecting Hunter, so you build your lineup when you sort of forget about it, right?
Yeah.
And just be like, well, I can't build my lineup against every single class, so I'll just forget about Hunter, no one's playing it. But when you're playing against people like Naaman, you know, he's definitely going to bring that one. So I'm not really too surprised it's performing so well, especially because the players that brought it really know how to handle that deck.
Yeah, both have played pretty exceptionally thus far. And despite it seeming like DrHippi has had some rough draws in the past with having double Snake Trap in his hand a few times, it's actually had one of the better win rates as far as decks go throughout the tournament. So let's take a look at a clip from one of the Hunter games that we saw in this series. This is from game number 1, and there was a lot of debate going on about this play, but this was pretty exceptionally played by DrHippi. He played around every single possible secret with the sequencing of plays. So, Raven, why don't you go ahead and walk me through this and explain to us why he did some of the things that he did that might have looked weird.
Yeah, so you see that there's only one secret live, and that could be one of a multitude of secrets: Noble Sacrifice, Avenge, Redemption, and especially with creatures like the Minibot on board, Redemption can be horrendous with the Divine Shield. So as he actually sequences his turn now, he's going to attack in, test for Noble Sacrifice straight away. Then the Horse Rider's going to come down, test for Repentance. He knows it's not. And then what he's going to do now is he's going to take the extra damage this turn to test for the Avenge. He attacks in, does take 3. He could have killed the mini-bot, but he has the Hunter's Mark now to clear that up with the Horse Rider. And what I would have done is if he attacked into the mini-bot instead, he would have took more damage clearing up the Avenge from the weapon as well.
Yeah, and also if he had attacked into the mini-bot first, if it was Redemption, it would have rezzed the mini-bot with the Divine Shield intact.
Yeah, and he would have had no way to actually clear the whole board in that way.
Yeah, so if you know what the secret is, then if you knew that was, say, Noble Sacrifice or Avenge or something like that, then it might have seemed clear that you didn't need to take that extra damage from attacking the Knife Juggler, but just really meticulous play.
Yeah, and to be honest, when playing around all those secrets, that doesn't happen often where you can afford to actually play around every single one, but making a play like that can actually win or lose you the game, because the second you don't play around the secret it is, and then it all starts to go wrong, and the game can just snowball from there. So really, really high-level play there.
Yeah, imagine in that instance, if he had not played around Redemption in that case, and the shielded mini-bot actually came back with the Divine Shield, it would have contested the Misha, and it would have made that game a completely different landscape. So definitely really solid play by DrHippi. Deserved a 3-0 and a deserved place in the final. So we are going to move on to the second semifinal match. And of course, later on, remember, we have that card reveal plus the grand finals to come up. So don't go anywhere. We are going to move into that semifinal. But before we do that, take a look at some of the highlights from the last match.